So I think today just let's follow up of the discussion happened um, on GitHub issue and see like which direction we would like to go. I think from the thread basically so we have several suggestions. So one is to come up with like a solid description of what the privilege escalation policy will look like, and then see how we go from there. See how the formal verification should be. I think what Tim suggests is that we pick a SMT solver, see what it can do, and then like flows from there. So he suggests like Z3, or I think we might have a list of candidates. I think what Justin talked about is like we should have a like specification like for the policy, and then maybe the formal verification should target that specification, like the symbolic graph we mentioned in the slide. So what do you guys think? Like there are probably three directions, I think, at the moment people discussed.
Where the three are the...
So from AWS guys, one is to write, like come up with a model of, for example, how privilege escalation policy might look like. Tim suggests we start from the solver first, see, for example, Z3 can do, and then follow from there. I think Justin mentions that we need to come up with the abstract enough specification for the policy, and then do the formal verification against that symbolic specification. I think that's like the three directions people discussed on the thread. So what do you guys think?
So I haven't actually looked at the different options too in depth, but I mean it might be good if somebody has time to kind of just like pick one up and try it, see kind of how far we get with them. Like reading through the threads, it sounds like we have suggestions for things to do, but not a whole lot of like confidence in whether any of them are gonna give us like results that we want. So I mean, I guess I think like kind of echoing Tim's request is like, or not request, but like suggestion. But it was like maybe start with like picking up one of the SMTs, playing around with it, see what kind of how far that gets us, right? And then maybe adjust our plan from there.
So what do you think, Erica?
I'm thinking, hold on.
I also sent an email to Jonathan from JP Morgan, who was at the policy working group session at Barcelona, I also invited him to comment on the thread. He hasn't yet, so I think if he can came up with the like customer story for a specific topic, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Mhm. The I agree. I think we need. I'm like my mind has been thinking a lot about like the privilege escalation recently, and modeling that out a bit is. I would be down to kind of play around with that a little bit. Try writing out a couple kind of the rules that allow that to happen.
So what would be like a application scenario for privilege escalation?
So it's come up in with there's the like operator case of a resource that can create resources. There's also the OPA gatekeeper situation where, and this both the operator lifecycle manager and as well as gatekeeper want to be able to cache some of the cluster state on their own, but then still kind of gate decisions and access via what the user later requesting actions can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that'll be like similar for the tenant CRD, right?
Yeah, it's kind of related. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other ones that come up, it's like for the certificate signing request, you know, how do we make sure that something can't fake being a node, or that doesn't, once, you know, if you can create a certificate signing request, how far can you get? What
Can
prevents
use PPM.
different, yes.
Okay, talking about the tenancy CRD, do we have any like further update from the multi-tenancy side? So I think I received email from Yisui. He's probably not going to follow up with the multi-tenancy side.
Last they kind of did an election or kind of a new co-lead. Then this last week, oh, wrong. I meant to. I think there wasn't as much further discussion at the moment on there was like some quota stuff discussed. Let me pull up the meeting notes. I sent a representative, but I haven't synced with her. Yeah, and they've also brought up there's resource quota, and that's, you know, a really low hanging fruit that I hope they are able to get to.
So
just having
your
resource quota. That's it.
what? Changing? So is Isui's proposal still valid, right?
I think until I don't know that someone else has decided to pick it up and like drive it forward.
Who's the new lead for multi-tenancy?
The Sanjeev is the new one here.
From Cisco?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here was what they discussed the last meeting.
ONAP?
Yeah. This is something I've just learned about.
Okay. So interesting. So are they like bring the concept into ONAP or like borrow the concept from ONAP?
I'm trying to understand what they're doing a little bit better because it's, as far as I can tell, they run the control plane for the other kind of architecture on Kubernetes.
Hey, no problem.
Of course, here for our purposes, the whole policy section here.
Nice. Yeah, that's ONAP's policy. It's well, it would be good that they take a look at. Yeah, this is the traditional telco policy.
Yep.
Jesus.
I know.
They have better figures.
Yeah, maybe that's what we need to be doing. Way more figures.
Yeah. It's really a lot of work. Policy. Okay, so what do you think? Let's came up with the like description for the privilege escalation, and
Yeah.
okay. So how do we like? Should we write something follow up on that thread or start a new one or?
Probably start. I'm not sure if like a doc is the right place to start drafting things.
With the Google Doc?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if there's something better.
Yeah, probably. Do we have someone? Hi, Kapil. His audio is not here. Oh, he's calling in.
Is there a better place, do you think?
As long as Google service doesn't crash that much, I think Google Doc
The uptime has been a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think let's start with the Google Doc. I think we can start from the couple scenarios and see if Patrick or Robert can come in with some of the OPA examples for that.
Yeah, so I can find some of the docs they were specifically talking about.
Yeah, so operator framework, gatekeeper, and tenant CRD. I think there should be like enough use cases for that, right?
I think so.
And
yeah.
Also, Isil also mentioned privilege escalation, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the doc. I'll link in the notes.
Okay.
For
hi, Compute.
Hello, just listening in.
Hi. Are you new to the meeting? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Are you new to the policy working group meeting, and or were you here before?
I am a bit. I've been here before, but it's been a while.
How's it going?
Pretty good. I was hoping to see where things are currently. Been looking at spending some time second half of the year on some policy stuff for Kubernetes.
Okay, cool. Which project are you working on?
So I'm working on a project called Cloud Custodian. I'm familiar with Gatekeeper and OPA, but I have another framework I've been using for policy management around cloud infrastructure and just trying to bring it into Kubernetes space as application infrastructure.
Is this the one? That's the right one?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is that the right? Oh, I linked to the GitHub. I think it should be the right one.
Is that the right policy?
Is that
framework
the project? The Cloud Custodian?
Oh, yes, that is.
Cool.
We currently have some basic Kubernetes support, but it's pretty minimal. In most of the clouds, we try to go serverless, event-driven. In Kubernetes, we're actually looking at potentially trying to do the same and actually have the compliance governance infrastructure running in serverless Lambda functions, Google Cloud functions, what have you, to manage clusters. We looked at doing operator stuff, doing emission controllers more traditionally as workload on cluster, but I think from the users I've talked to, they'd be happy with it being outside of the cluster as well.
What's the relationship or difference between cloud custodian and OPA?
So if you think of OPA as an engine that you have to make it do anything, so OPA, so custodians existed about, 4 years ago. If I had been doing custodian again from scratch, I would probably be basing on OPA today. I think it's a solid foundation and good framework. And if people need stuff today, I tell them to go look at OPA and Gatekeeper. The primary difference is that custodian tries to bring in a lot of other context information. It's not trying to be, OPA tries to do sort of a backlog, let's say logic matching, data log inspired, prolog derivative for some phrasing of those words. But custodian is much more, I guess, imperative, and the expression language ends up being fairly flexible and fairly extensible. So we will, but more importantly, I think for most policy decisions, it captures the contextual information for users to craft policies directly there, as opposed to being left as an exercise for the user to bring data in. And to some extent, Gatekeeper is trying to do that in the Kubernetes space around OPA as far as bringing in the data feeds. But a lot of that information doesn't necessarily live solely within the Kubernetes models either.
All right, thanks. Good to know. This is very interesting.
So could you almost like think about it as kind of like the Terraform, but for policy?
It's sort of a weird mix. I think of Terraform as being fairly idiomatic graph dependency-based provisioning. If you meant from a DSL with various providers that actually do the heavy lifting, yeah, that's analogous. It is heavily YAML-based. I think I would like to think of it as Ansible without the programming, in the sense that there's no for loops, try excepts, conditionals, etc. We try to keep the DSL pretty declarative itself. So in that sense, it is Terraform-esque, declarative,
Right.
multiple providers plugged in, yes.
And YAML. Or wait, there's
And YAML, except YAML, yes. No HCL. It is primarily Python, yes. And full integration across Azure, GCP, and AWS today with serverless event response on API calls for all response.
Got it.
Cool. We have like a second policy engine, basically.
As you've
good. That helps make better products. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
Are there specific things you've run into when thinking about the Kubernetes integration that you've run into, or?
Like a little bit. In some sense, Kubernetes represents opportunity. In some sense, it represents a different model. In most cloud providers, when we're doing integration, we're responding as a sort of detective control. And that means the resource is already created. Our response time is measured in seconds, though. So from a, if a database is set up on the internet, but you could never connect to it, did it actually exist? It's sort of the tree falling in the forest analogy. In Kubernetes, it's a little bit different. Because we're actually, as part of the integrating with the mission controllers, you have the ability to actually prevent things from ever existing. The flip side of that is that a lot of some of the contextual information you want is a little bit harder to get, and it changes our runtime modes because we get, very few things exist in a green field. And many times you're coming into an existing environment that needs help, let's say. And Custodia as an engine is fairly stateless for all that it pulls context information, but it's also abstract on where it gets that context information. So policies are effectively isomorphic from running on a server, running in a container, running in a serverless environment. In Kubernetes, there's a distinction there that we have to abstract over, which is I'm writing a policy sort of after the fact to do a periodic cleanup on a nightly or a monthly check versus running it in an emission controller, mostly because the rest of the state doesn't exist and we have to construct some synthetic transactions for various JSON patch operations, which isn't normally how we would necessarily structure things versus direct API calls. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but some context.
Have,
So how's Gatekeeper coming, out of curiosity?
Gatekeeper is, I've just started attended the first meeting this week for them. They're kind of also running into tenancy issues. And so that's one thing a lot of people don't know how to quite model well.
Sorry, I forgot to mute. Yeah, I've heard that before, and I've talked to a few other policy folks in Kubernetes space, and they were interested in having something that was potentially easier. I'm talking and looking at some of the stuff Microsoft's done there. It looks like that in some sense people are trying to solution around that by creating repositories of things. In other cases, I think that's why it's useful to have an additional engine there, just to have additional paths and mechanisms. Again, OPA's fantastic. Like I don't like this isn't. To me, it's more about just for me, I find it very useful to have a single project that can address across the addressable space. But if you're doing something if you need a framework to build upon, to build custom products or to go into new spaces, I think OPA has, it's a great engine. But for approaching to the compliance and governance folks, Custodian has many users, and it is not necessarily software developers that are writing policies and offering policies. It's solutions architects, compliance, governance, security folks, and keeping a focus on what's simple for them is the key focus of the project.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. In some ways, the flexibility that OPA gives you means you can obscure what they're trying to do. So the other thing I was reading the Facebook's Libra currency has. So we haven't discussed yet.
I heard it was written. It's written in Rust, I hear.
Right.
So my crypto Twitter friends are fighting intensely. I think they actually recruited a really good batch of experts to working on that project, so that it was like, you sold out, and then finger pointing and but
really.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting. They basically borrowed a consensus algorithm from something VMware research team came up like a couple years ago. So a variant of Tendermint or BFT. And they also use the noise protocol framework for the validator, the authentication between, for the communications between the validators, which is also super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to ping the guys I know on Twitter that are working on Libra to give more detail, or they can write some blog posts for it. Well, I don't think it's a blockchain in the canonical sense. It is mostly like a distributed database.
I feel like we should really be calling instead of blockchain, we should just be calling it like applied crypto.
Yeah, applied crypto for databases.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to make a doc for
okay.
the formal stuff for
Yeah.
the privilege kind of escalation stuff.
Yeah, okay. Let's follow up on that.
Then the other thing, and this has kind of come up several times recently, is what is the future of pod security policies?
I noticed EKS just announced support for PodSecurity policies today.
A lot, I think the use of them is pretty high. As far in the multi-tenancy panel in Barcelona, like we asked, who's using pod security policies, and it was maybe like half the hand, maybe not quite half, but a solid, it wasn't like a few people, it was a large amount.
So is there any like general directions that like people incline to for the pod security policy?
The problem is they weren't done particularly great. And so OpenShift has security context constraints that got upstreamed as pod security policies, but did things not necessarily missing a few features. So OpenShift won't move to PSPs unless they were brought to feature parity. But pod security policy weaknesses and the way it's kind of implemented, it's like no one really wants to do the work on something that's not great.
Is there anything in particular there that, as far as feature differential?
Yeah, there's a few like extra validation fields, and then a big one, like for instance, is lack of priority ordering for pod security policies. I think in that issue there is a list of all of the of the things that are kind of missing.
I was idly wondering if you'd taken the room of people that said yes to pod security policies, if you'd ask them, are you looking at Kata containers or Firecracker for doing VM isolation between workloads? If you see any hands, or at least curious about it.
I know
pod security policies feel very much like how do we, not all of it, but some significant portion of it feels very much about how do we constrain containers.
Yeah.
But if containers are VMs, some of it goes away.
Some of it. I think there's always a class of workloads that have a tighter integration kind of, or are more privileged in some sense in what they can access on the node. So there kind of will be different pods that would be more privileged or less privileged. And then you kind of need a way to specify that certain who's allowed to create which type running on which nodes. So I think the policy
absolutely
will still be there.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all.
Yeah, device pass-through, PCI, definitely there's always daemon sets around control tiers. There's always going to be privileged things on nodes, but at least for application workloads, I don't know. I think it's still early days, but I'm hopeful that some of the VM stuff will come to fruition as well. To quote Dan Walsh, yeah, I won't actually. I'll leave it at that.
I love Dan. Yeah, I mean, as much as anyone complains about SE Linux, the number of like CVEs that have not, been saved by the fact that the SE Linux was on, it's pretty high.
Actually, that might be a great analogy for OPA. SE Linux took years of tooling to make it, and humans don't write SE Linux policies generally. Programs do. Kind of why I go with AppArmor, because like I can actually read it, and doesn't. You're right. SE Linux has done well as far as CVs, and I think the last Docker CV went past AppArmor, but I tend to want simplicity in my security space and readability.
That's always kind of a difficult balance with that. Yeah, unless there's tooling in between. That does remind me though of another model, the capabilities. How did I miss that the WebAssembly system interface is going with the capabilities model?
I just saw. I think what's her name? Linda, or I think she there's a like talk she gave at the WebAssembly EU. I think you can check it out. So yeah, basically recapture all the WASI proposals.
Sweet.
Yeah. So like should PSP or like gatekeeper or anything should function like PSP, cover like containers like Kata, Firecracker, or even like WASM?
The runtime class, I don't know how much that covers. In some ways, I wonder if that's what we should merge in with.
Or like, should it be that general, or just containers should be fine?
Yeah.
I think there's some subset of PodSecurity policies that are generic, it sounds like. And I mean, I think there's going to be, like, I don't know if I would necessarily change them per se. You're exposed to adapting them to the runtimes, but I don't think unfortunately, I think there's too many layers of abstraction between the two, but like, I don't know if PSPs are actually interpreted by like CRI or what have you.
Nope, it's only at admission of the pod.
Oh, gee. So like, are we in favor of what is now discussed or proposed, like having gatekeeper probably as a replacement for PSP, or?
Hey guys, I just joined.
Hey,
perfect.
Hey,
I actually joined to talk about this, so I think I joined right on time.
Yep.
I think it might be useful to do like a quick spike just to see what are the gaps, right? I feel like it's cool that people say that, but I think without like actually trying to see if there's like a one-to-one mapping, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, for one, I guess knowing if it's even possible, and then two, what would it look like for users for us to say, oh, you should use this? What's like the migration look like?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure I looked at this at one point and I was like, oh, there's definitely like a subset of them that I could easily define policies within Gatekeeper, because that's literally what I did. But I think there's a different mindset when you create like the Gatekeeper policies. It's sort of like you have to, because the way Rego works is it's like deny, right? Whereas PSP, I think it's more allow. So it's like a different way of writing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's like getting into the weed of things, but I think it's just implementation wise, it's different. Yeah. But it doesn't mean it can't.
PSPs are, sorry, I was just going to agree that I think PSPs fit in the Kubernetes model of writing and styling as attribute values in maps versus diving into Rego and learning another language.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember though correctly, for one, Gatekeeper, you can run Gatekeeper without having an OPA set up.
Well, currently, the latest version of Gatekeeper, it's an embedded local OPA.
Okay.
So everything runs in one container,
yeah. Okay. I just wanted to, and it's kind of runs as like an admission controller.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Currently, it's just validation, which is what we need.
Right.
I was actually going to take a stab at this. I don't know if anyone wants to collaborate on this.
Yeah, I think definitely sounds interesting for us. And also, I think
like a feature comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a mapping. Like, hey, here are the the constraint templates that you can create, and it maps to this existing PSP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if we can have Gatekeeper do PSP, that means we basically can like do a lot of other policies.
That I imagine.
Yeah. So anywhere we can start like collaboration for that?
I can quickly create a repo just under my name, like just like a playground if you guys want.
Yeah, that'd be.
Just want to create a Google Doc? I mean, is it like either way, but repo works.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I was thinking more like the.
I'm thinking if we're actually live editing in the doc in the meeting.
Sorry?
Sorry, I was just saying if we're going to live edit in a meeting, we do this like one of these meetings to actually go review and write it together, then it would be, I don't know, Git's great, repos are great, but they are definitely single-threaded collaboration.
Sure. I was thinking more like the output would be like a bunch of constraint templates. You know what I mean?
Ah, gotcha. Sorry. I thought you were just talking about the analysis doc.
A what?
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, go right into it. Well, okay, sounds great. Anything else? We covered really a lot of topic today.
Yeah, should we just go over real quick action items? Make sure. I'll start a doc and then link both here and in the sig-security issue for that. And then, Rita, is there anything we need to do for the collaborating?
I was just gonna add everybody to like a repo, and then if anyone has questions on Gatekeeper, I'm happy to help. I'm not sure how familiar folks are, and then hopefully everyone will start writing constraint templates.
Awesome.
Oh, also, what's the best communication channel?
Maybe Slack.
Slack or mailing list if you want more async.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there's a workgroup policy Slack channel. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's very confusing because there's a Kubernetes Slack with a Kubernetes policy channel, and then a Kubernetes, right? The OPA with Kubernetes policy.
I know. No, I sorry. Yeah, I think
sorry, you're
going. Yeah. I think I'm in the right one, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm actually on the OPA one, but not the Kubernetes one. So I assume we're talking about the Kubernetes SIG one on the Kubernetes Slack.
And we are also on the CNCF sig-security channel.
Yeah, maybe we that's the common ground. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Only 9 Slacks. Not too bad.
I have like 7. Jesus. Okay, I think that's the two action item.
Cool.
We want to follow. Yeah.
You'll be at KubeCon next week, so do we want to skip?
Yeah. I think let's skip next week and probably got a chance to talk with Scott. See. Yeah, what's he's thinking and where he can help out with the analysis.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Let's conclude the meeting today. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.